Well, hello again, and it's time for another Steve Mumbling roundup of this week's free range ETs coming here. Piffle peddlers. The residents of Royston Vasey have been at it again. I've seen some absolute rubbish this week, mainly from Gary Nolan. I was literally falling about on the floor laughing listening to Gary Nolan. I thought, he can't be serious, is this? Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So Ross Coulthard, when he was at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, when he was doing his presentation last week or the week before, I did a video commenting on it. Now, I said, you know, he tells all these great science fiction stories, and then of course he said, oh well, of course it's all hearsay, there's no actual evidence for any of this. And of course the reason he jazzed it up and he made it all sound real, and you know Ross Coulthard, he's a very good speaker, he's very articulate. You know, he's like who's the fake moon moron? The old geezer. Marcus Allen. You know, he's a very good speaker and he's very articulate, but what he's actually saying is complete and utter rubbish. Yeah, all these fantastic stories, and of course, well, it could all be hearsay, you know, almost under his breath. But anyway, he was telling us that, I don't think I mentioned this last week, you know, I was saying there's all these different organisations now, you know, you've got the Paradigms and ISA and Soul Foundation. Now there's another one, NHIR, which is the Non-Human Intelligence Research Institute. I suspect they're not going to be terribly busy, to be perfectly honest. What exactly are they going to be researching? Anyway, apparently this is going to be funded by Dr. Anton Uvarov, maybe? I can't read my own writing here. Which may be a first in the Australian region. Now, I made these notes during the week, as usual. You know, they're not correlated. So, apparently, what he wants to do is set up a state-of-the-art observation station or stations placed in UAP hotspots. Now, and these are going to be the first in the Australasian region. Now I'm going to do a little bit of research to see what are the UFO hotspots in Australia. I spoke to a naval officer, a commander in the Navy, and I said to him, what's the Australian Defence Department's policy on aliens and UAPs? And he said, there isn't one. So that's how often they get involved with this sort of thing. Now, I spent 7 years actually in the outback, living in the outback, and the sort of job I was doing, I'd be out under the stars. It was a call-out type arrangement, you know, if something went wrong in the middle of the night, I had to go and fix it. And it's beautiful, black sky, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, moonless, twinkling stars, and I never saw anything. And I was looking, you know. I never saw anything. I've worked with people that have worked on Over the Horizon Radar, the long range Dawn project. Never seen anything unexplainable. And they're looking at huge swathes of, you know, sky with the Over the Horizon Radar. You can look up into East Timor and see planes landing. I don't know if that's secret, actually, it's probably not. They track the stealth. The F-117, when it first came out, the stealth Nighthawk, you know, the Americans flew it around the world and said, see if you can track it, and the Australians tracked it with their HF Over the Horizon Radar, because it's long wavelength radars that look down, bounce off the ionosphere and look down on the target, you know, whereas the F-117 was designed to deflect centimetric and millimetric wavelength radars. Because of its funny shape, it would deflect them off, so it would be very, very low radar profile. Doesn't help you if you're looking at the aircraft in plan view with very long wavelength radar. Anyway, that's enough of that. So, an aside. So basically in Australia there's not very much going on. I mean, there might be some UFO fanboys and girls that will tell you that something is going on. You know, a guy claims to have had sex with a female alien. And there's Mary Rodwell, of course, quite a famous Australian UFO enthusiast, writes books about it, interviews people. I've seen nothing credible there. There was a television programme, My Mum Talks to Aliens. Her son's a vet, and he did a documentary about his mother, and he said he was a bit concerned about her because, you know, she's a bit wobbly with this UFO stuff. I think he's right, having watched the programme. Now, so they want to set these things up in Australia and in the Australasian region, and they're going to be state-of-the-art observation stations placed in UAP hotspots. Name a UAP hotspot in Australia. It sounds an awful lot like Avi Loeb's Galileo project with his gremlins. I wonder if they're going to be similar devices they're going to set up for these state-of-the-art observation stations. There's no details on what that is going to comprise. It's, you know, what are they going to put in it? I mean, if I said my house was a UFO hotspot, they're going to come up with a big Pelican case, are they? You know, a couple of coax cables coming out, some antennas, microphones, cameras, plugging all in. Is that what they've got in mind? Because, I mean, that's seriously, as Avi Loeb says himself, that is seriously low-hanging fruit. I've never seen... I live up in the air. You know, I can see in the distance, I can see the airport. The big international and domestic airports. There's a little aerodrome over the back there when they keep the roll-flying doctor planes and flying clubs and sort of stuff. But... and it does look quite good. You know, you see the stuff coming in and the landing lights are when they're coming straight towards you, the landing lights are going like that, you know. Well, they're just planes landing at the airport, you know. But they've made good UFO videos. Be a lot better than Bledsoe's, that's for sure. Bledsoe. And I was looking at, you know, the black mailbox. This is another aside, actually. Bob Lazar, he used to take people out to the black mailbox and show them the UFOs coming up above Area 51. Now, Bob Lazar must be genuine because he knew when they were going to be testing these things. Well, what he knew was the flight schedule of the Janet aircraft that take the Area 51 staff into the base from Los Angeles. And if you look at it on Google Earth, you'll see where the black mailbox is. If you draw a line between that and Las Vegas... Area 51 runways are at an angle like that, so the planes are coming towards you, and there's a mountain range between you and the planes approaching, and Area 51's on the other side of the mountain range. And the lights are doing this, you know. So it looks like they're UFOs, but it's actually landing lights from the Janet flights, and they drop below the range of hills, mountains. So the lights just go down like that. So you can't see them then turn on a final onto the runway at an angle, and that's all that was. And I think Stephen Greer uses the same trick with his CE5, you know, concentrate people. We can draw in aliens from all over the galaxy, just concentrate, you know. You, straighten up your deck chair. Where's my $5,000? CE5. So what is going to be the difference between in this NHIR thing? At least they're not e-begging for this one. He's actually saying that he'll provide investment for it, this Dr. Anton Uvarov. But what is the difference exactly between their state-of-the-art observation station and Avi Loeb's Gremlins, the unit? Going to do exactly the same thing, basically. They're going to call them gremlins. I've not seen any technical information on these things. But what exactly is it going to detect? This is what you've got to ask yourself, you know. I mean, if it's electromagnetic, lightning produces electromagnetic pulses, you know. You've ever heard of Schumann resonance? You know, you can listen to Schumann resonance. Very low frequency. I think it's about 8 hertz, but it's the electromagnetic energy given off by all the lightning strikes around the planet. So, and you know, you can't manipulate gravity with electromagnetism. A lot of people think you can, because you can get an electromagnet and you can make metal objects float above it, you know. So, you know, this drive, this propulsion system that UFOs use must be some sort of electromagnetic propulsion. I mean, you don't see junkyard cranes, you know, the cranes with the big electromagnets on the end, they pick cars up, and, you know, trucks and all this, immensely powerful electromagnets. You don't see those floating around the junkyard there, a foot off the ground, because they've turned on their massive electromagnet and now they can overcome gravity magically with it. So, you know, there needs to be something in there that's going to detect gravitational anomalies. You know, if you've got some sort of anti-gravity drive system, it wants to be something that's not going to be affected by magnetism. You know, something non-ferrous, something like a couple of plastic veins, maybe. You know, connected to a couple of sensors to detect whether the veins are moving, and they've got to be under a glass jar, so it can't be moved by the wind, or there can't be anything external that will affect them other than slight changes in gravity. You need something like that. Now, Avi Loeb's Galileo project, the stuff he's got on the roof of Harvard, I think it is, where he is. He's got a microphone, he's got a camera, he's got a discone antenna with a wideband receiver on it. So basically, I think microphone. I think what it does is, and it may actually use passive radar, which means, you know, I could put a discone antenna up here and have a wideband receiver, and I could be looking at television station signals which would appear as spikes, you know, television and radio signals which would appear as spikes across the spectrum display on the wideband receiver. Now, if anything like an aircraft flies between the signal's origin and me, there'll be a slight disturbance. You know, the amplitude of that will be slightly changed, and it might it may be that something like that, and also they might be able to tell if the signal's being Doppler shifted. It'd be very slightly Doppler shifted, maybe by the movement of the aircraft in front of it, whether it's coming towards or going away, or so it might be something like that. But how you would, and it would then spin the camera around to that position in the sky, film it. The microphone would do the same, it would record any sound from it. But that might be how these things work. But it's, you know, I mean, what would be the range on something like that? You'd have to have it well away from anything mundane, you know. So you couldn't have one where I live because there's so many aircraft flying around here. It would be activating all the time. Now, Avi Loeb's got one of these on top of a university, presumably in a city. So how on earth does that detect anything? Because there'd be so much ambient noise, aircraft in the sky, and all that sort of stuff. I'd be interested to see any results he publishes from what he's actually detected with that. But personally, I think it's a waste of time. Can't do any harm, but I really would not expect any worthwhile data from it. So that's what this new NHIR wants to do. And apparently Dr. Anton Uvarov is keen to fund this, put some money into it. So he's obviously made a few quid with something. Normally it's the other way around, isn't it? You know, it's normally e-begging on the part of the ET piffle peddlers. You know, we want your money, TTSA. We'll build a starship, just send us millions of dollars, you know. And suddenly you find the people involved in it are out of debt and there's no starship. Oh dear. Anyway, okay, so, you know, the device has got to be very carefully thought out, and will probably be a waste of time. As Avi Loeb says, if you don't look, you'll never know, which is true, of course. But I think that is clutching at straws in the extreme. It really is. You'll probably find most UFO hotspots in your military bases. So, you know, what sort of frequency ranges are they going to be looking at? Is it going to be cameras and microphones? Let's see some technical details. It'd be quite amusing, I think, to see some technical details. And have they consulted with Avi Loeb? Are they just making sort of licensed copies, if you like, of the gremlins that Avi Loeb is either having built or has had built for the Galileo project? You know, looking for aliens, trying to detect aliens. They're going to have to be very, very close by to get any kind of meaningful data, I would think, especially with microphones and cameras. You know, we need more fuzzy UFO pictures, isn't it? You know, we're short of those. I'm going to dot with that page. So, will Dr. Antov, now he claims it's all for legit scientific research, but you know, is this going to morph into another Skinwalker Ranch debacle? You know, people just get themselves on TV, they start getting good TV money, and they start putting out lots and lots and lots of complete and utter rubbish just to perpetuate it. You know, Skinwalker Ranch and these other things that you see on TV. You know, is it a serious thing or not? I find it hard to take it seriously personally. As I said, I've got no idea how you go about placing these things and what they really expect to detect. I mean, Australia already has a fireball project out in the bush. There's loads of cameras. If they detect something moving in the sky, this is nothing to do with aliens or ET. This is a fireball detection project. It's run by a university. And they detect fireballs. You never hear of them detecting any alien spacecraft. Now, admittedly, that's optical. You know, it's got to be bright and moving for it to automatically film it and track it. It will track it too, so they can go and have a look if it's come to Earth and you know, collect up the bits and analyse them. It's some science. Nothing to do with ET. Another aside. What am I doing today? Blimey, this is going to be a long video, I think. This one. Now, Gary Nolan, I mean, really, I think he's lost the plot. I saw him. I saw him being interviewed, and the sort of rubbish he was coming out with. You know, he was saying that they want to. I don't know if this is the Soul Foundation, maybe. They want to set up private recovery groups. You know, so they're not going to rely on the government to go and recover alien spacecraft. They're going to go and do it themselves. Private recovery groups, teams ready to go, alert teams. You know, they're going to have to be quick off the mark, aren't they? They're going to have to be an alert team, and so they're going to try and get to a crashed alien spacecraft first and recover the debris. I mean, how do they know what sort of debris they're going to be dealing with? You know, personally, I don't think they crash here, but. Just assuming this was real for a minute, you know, alien spacecraft crashes, where it's not going to be, it's not going to be the mothership, if you like, you know, the thing that flies around the galaxy. It's going to be a little scout thing, you know. You hear reports of these 30, 40 feet diameter things. So if it crashes, and there's bits of it all over the place, you know, I mean, how are they going to? If this really did happen, I mean, the government would sort of forensically examine the site, you know. So these people are going to go out there, they're going to scoop it all up as quick as they can, put it in the back of a dump truck or something, and scuttle off with it before the government gets there. I think that's what he's got in mind. And he said, well, let's just hope our teams don't get involved in a firefight with the troops. So if Gary Nolan's private recovery teams get to an ET crash before the government, they're going to be armed, because he doesn't want them to get involved in a firefight. They're going to be armed, otherwise there'd be no question of them getting involved in a firefight, would there? The troops would turn up and tell them to pee off, and that'd be that. But he's suggesting they're going to be armed. They're going to let's hope they don't get involved in a firefight. They're going to defend their find with weapons. Lethal force. So if the army turns up, it's going to be a shooting match between the military and Gary Nolan's team of private recovery guys. Does that sound remotely plausible to you? For a start, how are they going to know about it before the government does? The government has all sorts of things, all the governments do, looking at what's in low Earth orbit, what's around the planet and all this sort of stuff. How is Nolan's team going to be notified before the government that something like that has happened? Is he going to rely on something coming down near a little town maybe in outback America? This has got to be American only, isn't it? No, everyone else will just fall out laughing at this. So something comes down in outback America. The locals all run out, this being the 21st century, they're all going to be live streaming it, because they think it's interesting, they think it's fun, they think they might be able to make $1 out of it. So it's going to be live streamed on the internet, many social platforms, all over the place. Long before any kind of recovery team, Nolan's or the government's or otherwise, get to it. They're not going to go, I better phone Gary Nolan immediately. There's an alien spacecraft crashed in my back garden. I'd better tell Gary Nolan so he can get his recovery team here immediately. Does he seriously believe that? Absolutely nuts. Now, that wasn't the only crazy thing he said. Oh dear, what else? Now this I rolled on the floor laughing at this one. Now, Gary Nolan said one explanation, possible explanation for UAPs. Is that dinosaurs, hundreds of millions of years ago, when the asteroid struck, it didn't wipe them all out. Some of them survived, and they went underground because they thought it was safer, and they preferred it underground. So, dinosaurs, pretty big piece of kit. We're not talking about moles here. And while they were, is he a hollow earther maybe? How much space would you need for a dinosaur colony underground? How could you possibly, would you prefer living underground? Where's the sunlight coming from? How are you going to grow anything to eat? It's just complete and utter nonsense. Anyway, he said it gets worse. And he said that while they were underground, they may have developed AI. Dinosaurs. They may have. You could see why I could never interview these people, even if they would accept, which of course they wouldn't. They know they get torn to pieces in 2 minutes. I could never interview these people. I just couldn't. I couldn't keep a straight face. But so dinosaurs went underground, millions of years ago, at the time of the asteroid impact. They stayed underground because they preferred it. They developed AI, and that's what we're seeing flying around today. Dinosaurs, AI from the inner Earth. I'm surprised actually there wasn't a sort of shepherd's crook, stage left, round his neck. Thank you, Professor. Next speaker, please. Next guest, please. So ludicrous, rubbish. You can see why I say these people are residents of Royston Vasey, can't you? I mean, It's bizarre. So, you know, he's got his recovery teams, private recovery teams. They're going to have nothing to recover. They're not going to get there before the government. If they did, they're not going to be involved in a firefight. No one's going to defend to the death a piece, the crash of an alien spacecraft. Not privately, anyway. You know, I mean, Nolan talks about warp drive. You know, he's a science fiction fan. Nolan, he's been reading it since he was a kid. He's told us that. Star Trek uses warp drive. There's a theoretical warp drive, this Albuquerque drive or whatever it is. But it uses a type of energy that no one knows how to make. It uses an awful lot of it, an impossible amount of it, and you know, sort of negative energy and all this. You know, it's all science fiction. It's theoretical rubbish. And even if you could warp space, I mean, anyone that might be residing in the piece of space that you're thinking of travelling through might not like that very much. What effect would that have if you were going through a solar system using warp drive? And he talks about you know, electromagnetic pulses. You know, big electromagnetic bursts of electromagnetic pulses. You know, is that going to have, you know, is that going to let you travel between the stars? And pardon me, of course it won't. Electromagnetism has no effect on gravity. So you can't warp space with electromagnetism. You could go to a junkyard, turn on the crane, and if you had some form of gravitational field detector, and you moved it around, it's not going to change when you turn the electromagnet on, and they're big electromagnets. So Nolan thinks a blast of electromagnetic energy could bring down an ET craft. A blast of electromagnetic energy could bring down an ET craft. Well, if ET can get here on a willy-nilly basis from somewhere else in the galaxy, they're going to have a very, very good understanding of electromagnetism. What's he hinting at here? High-power radars, electromagnetic radiation could bring down an ET craft. Is this some sort of way of supporting what some other people have been saying, when it's complete and utter rubbish? You're not going to be able to bring down a craft with electromagnetic pulses. Aliens will be all across electromagnetism, what it can do, what it can't do, potential weapons you could use, make out of it. You're not going to be able to bring down an ET craft with electromagnetism. Ridiculous. So, and you hear all this stupid stuff about you know, radar and weather bringing down ET craft. It wouldn't. They would have seen bad weather before. They certainly be all across electromagnetism. They're going to have a very good understanding of gravity and how to manipulate it, dark matter and dark energy, and how to manipulate those. If they can get here, we're not going to be able. Their detection systems would be, dare I say, out of this world. You know, so by the time you've painted it, they'd be gone. You wouldn't be able to attack an alien spacecraft. You know, the technology is just so, you know, people just can't comprehend what that technology might be like. So they sort of relate it to what we can do and what we can see. You know, 21st century terrestrial technology. They relate it to that, and it's not going to be anything like that. Even Ross Coulthard now, and I said this last time, I'm sure he's seen some of my videos. You know, I say you're not going to find any metal in an alien spacecraft. The materials they use are going to be super exotic, low mass, synthetic materials we can't even imagine. You know. And in his last speech, because he's getting a keynote, he was a keynote speaker, he's getting a big fee, keynote speaker at the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. He said they got a bit of material, you know, and it's super exotic, low mass, synthetic materials bonded together at an atomic level. So thanks for watching my video, Mr. Coulthard, because he thinks, you know, mumbling is right. There's not going to be any metal in an alien spacecraft. It's going to be these super exotic materials. So now he's included it in his script because it sounds more convincing. Doesn't mean they've got any of this stuff. And thanks for the views. You know, if you're watching at, you know, if Mr. Coulthard, Mr. Nolan, and the Pentagon is watching, thank you very much indeed. I certainly need the views. So, really, I mean, you can understand why Gary Nolan might get a call from someone else in the piffle peddling world, this secret club of the piffle peddlers, saying, watch what you're saying. He was threatened, watch what you're saying, Nolan. You know, because he said he had aliens at the bottom of his bed when he was a kid. They were looking through the windows. They were there for weeks on end. You're losing any credibility, Nolan. For goodness sake, watch what you're saying. And now he's coming out with what we could be seeing flying around in the sky is an unidentified aerial phenomenon and could be AI made by underground dinosaurs. Next caller, please. It is good fun keeping an eye on these guys. It really is. I mean, I normally watch this stuff when I'm having my breakfast, and a couple of times this week I've actually spat my Sultana brand on the floor. You know, put it in there and just come out with another comment. It's gone. Hilarious nonsense. Absolutely hilarious nonsense. I've said it before. I'll make a bold prediction. You know, his private recovery teams are going to have nothing to recover. Can you imagine? You know, I do a job that's there's an on-call aspect to it, so I can get a call in the middle of the night. I have to deal with something. You know, so. And in the past, not so much these days, but I've had to get up in the middle of the night and drive 200 kilometres out into the bush to repair something. Now, if I was part of this alert team, what are the members of the alert team going to be doing during the day, their normal day? They're going to be doing their normal job, as I do, and then there'll be an on-call aspect to it, and there'll be an on-call roster, you know, because they want to drink a few beers, go to barbecues, you know, they can't drink and drive, they can't drink and fly. So there's going to have to be a roster for on-call people to rush off to these crash retrievals. And it might not just be a case of driving 200 kilometres, it might be a case of getting to the other side of the country before the military does. And what happens if it's outside of the United States? This is nonsense, absolute drivel. They're coming out with all this science fiction claptrap to give the impression this UFO ET's coming here and crashing is real, and neither of those are true. ET is not coming here. ET is not coming here and crashing. It's ludicrous. I've said it before. What would be in it for them? They're going to cross the galaxy to come here and stand at the bottom of a kid's bed for weeks on end, talk to a one-armed woodcutter, abduct a lumberjack. Think, oh, this poor fellow's construction company's gone down the gurgler. Let's give him a best-selling book. We'll give him an interview. Complete and utter rubbish. So, what else have we got? Oh, Nolan tells us again. He reiterates his point about SETI being a load of rubbish. A complete and utter waste of time. And he says, well, there's only 100 years where we generate radio signals, you know. What you've got to bear in mind is that probably most technological species will go through that phase. And they will go through a phase similar to us, where they're going to be curious about if people are out there. They might even start squirting signals out, you know, like we did. We sent a signal out from Arecibo, 3 terawatts effective radiative power, go right across the galaxy. And they might do something like that, just for fun, you know, squirt out a signal, see if they get a response. But you've got to bear in mind we're talking light years of distance, you know, so you might not get You know, if a planet's 100 light years away, it's going to take 200 light years to get a response, 200 years rather, to get a response, even if they respond immediately. But what the point that Nolan and all these other guys that rubbish SETI are missing is if a signal is detected, and it could have, you know, it could have taken 10,000 years to get here. Someone might have been doing this 10,000 years ago. Started doing this 10,000 years ago. Be 10,000 light years away. And the signal might arrive, it could arrive now, while I'm doing this video. And it'll be detected by SETI, and it could be verified by other radio telescopes to be a synthetic signal, to be a narrow band signal that's got modulation on it, it's got information on it. Even if you can't decode the information, you know it's an artificially structured signal that's come from a technology. You know that we are not alone. We are not the only technological species in the galaxy, just by receiving that one signal. And that's the point they're missing. You know. And if there's billions of stars and billions of planets, then how many technologically advanced species are there that are going to go through that phase? As I say, you know, if they're 200 light years, 300 light years away, they could have they could have squirted a signal in our direction 200 years ago. We won't see it for another 100 years. But there could be a number of species that are doing this. We could get a signal at any time, and we only need one signal that is determined to be artificial, that is obviously artificial. And there are ways of telling that, you know. You know, if it's a narrowband signal, if it's got modulation, it's an artificial, it's a structured signal. It's been generated by a technology, and you only need one of those, verified by a few radio telescopes around the world, to know as fact we are not alone in the galaxy or the universe. So poo-pooing SETI just shows you how clueless Nolan really is when it comes to all this stuff. As I said before, you know, professionally I'm sure he's a wizard with whatever he's doing, but when it comes to ETs, SETI, anything like that, he's got no idea. I mean, really, dinosaurs underground creating AI. To be able to create AI, they're going to have to go through an industrial revolution. You know, they're going to have to go through a technological revolution. Can you imagine a diplodocus trying to solder components onto a circuit board? Even if the diplodocus is smart enough to think of an electronic circuit it wants to build, it can't build it, you know, because it's got big pads on the end of its legs like an elephant. Maybe he's thinking a T-Rex, you know, be a bit grumpy. A T-Rex. I'll help you with that, Mr. Diplodocus. I've got hands. What do you want soldered? Says the T-Rex. No idea. No bloody idea. Oh dear. So yeah, don't poo-poo SETI. Well worth it. It's an excellent effort and it's well worth it. One signal will tell the tale. One artificial signal, and it's done and dusted. We're not alone. Verified, obviously, with different radio telescopes. So, Nolan says he has analysed materials that are put together in a way he can't understand. We can't understand. So he's not alone in not being able to understand how these materials are put together. Now, I did read a little bit about this. If I remember rightly, it was some sort of sand stuff and had some other stuff in it. Now, what... and this was supposedly from a UFO landing site, you know, alien spacecraft landing site. And it did something to the ground. It's got this material from the ground. So, did he take any control samples from where the alien spacecraft didn't land? Does he have any control samples? Does he have any control samples of that area where it's been struck by lightning? An immense amount of power in lightning strikes. Hits the ground, you know. Vitrifies sand into glass. And if it's not going to be pure sand, probably, if there's other materials in that, is that going to all be liquefied in that instant? When it cools, you've got this funny arrangement of how these materials are bonded together. Is it just the result of a lightning strike? He doesn't say he's investigated that because, well, it's not in his interest to, is it really? He wants it to be ET material. They're peddling all this. ET's coming here, it's real rubbish. Tangible evidence is what's required. This is such a fantastic story, such a monumental story. You need tangible evidence verified by different independent universities that this is ET material, be it biological or technological. That's what's required. I think that's pretty much it. So that's this week's complete and utter rubbish that I've seen from the residents of Royston Vasey, the UFO ET piffle peddlers. Complete and utter rubbish. You know, and again, Nolan was saying, well, the interviewer said to him, you know, if someone was new to this subject, what would you recommend? How would you recommend that they introduce themselves to the subject? And he said, well, take a look at the Soul Foundation. Soul Foundation's presentations. And I thought, yeah, and what are you going to see exactly, you know? An ex-admiral saying, oh, we're being visited by several alien species. He knows that because he's been told it, and he chooses to believe it, not because there's any evidence to support that, or that he's seen any evidence to support that, or that he has any first-hand evidence of ET materials. This is the sort of rubbish you're going to see at the Soul Foundation. You know, Colonel Nell has worked with all those defence contractors. He was in the UAP task force. He only knows it's going on because he says, well, look at all these other people. They're saying it's going on. It must be true. That's the sort of rubbish you're going to see from the Soul Foundation. As I've said before, it's the shit out of luck foundation, because they're going to be shit out of luck if they think they're going to be investigating, handling alien materials. It's not going to happen. Don't waste your time with the Soul Foundation or any of these other things, you know, until someone actually says, here's the tangible evidence, it's been verified by multiple independent universities, put a line through all of this recovered ET, aliens are coming here, rubbish. Okay, well, Saturday morning, it's the 15th of June, about 20 degrees centigrade, as you can see by my face. The sun is shining, not a cloud in the sky, equivalent to the 15th of November in the UK. Won't be like that. Oof. Rain, freezing. Yeah. All right, well, I've got quite a lot to do, as usual. It's a busy weekend for me. It's another 3-day weekend for me, but busy yesterday. I'm going to be even busier today, so I better get on with it. As always, if you've struggled through the video all the way to this point, many thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.